Today I'm going to show you a really simple two-hand synchronization drill you can use to get your hands in tighter sync with everything you play on guitar. And the cool part about it is you can practice it at literally any speed, fast, slow, or somewhere in between. It really doesn't matter. As long as you do what I'm going to show you for even a few minutes per day, your hands will have no choice but to get in tighter sync, and when that happens, you will become a cleaner and more accurate guitar player.
Well, that's nice.
But before we get to the drill itself, I want to explain the principles and the philosophy I used to develop this drill and other drills like it to improve various parts of your guitar playing mechanism very quickly. As a mentor of mine once told me, once you understand the principles of something, you can create your own tactics. And this is the level you really want to get to, because then you really don't need anybody to spoon feed you answers. Then you can think for yourself and know exactly what to do anytime you're stuck on not being able to play something as well as you want. You know exactly what to do and how to do it, and then practicing becomes easy and your playing improves faster. The principle I'm using here is called exaggeration. What it is you take any problem in your guitar playing, whether it's two-hand synchronization, string skipping, sloppy string noise, excessive muscle tension, and you exaggerate it. You blow it up and you make it bigger than it already is. And when you do this, it becomes easy to monitor what's happening under your mental microscope and know exactly what needs to change in your practicing or in your technique to make the problem go away, and it becomes easy to monitor your progress to make sure you're actually doing the right things and you're moving your playing in the right direction. And in the case of two-hand synchronization, there are two elements you want to pay attention to that can cause your hands to get out of sync if you're not careful. The first one is simply not fretting the note and picking the note at the exact same time. If one hand hits the string before the other hand does, obviously your hands are not in sync.
I had that problem.
And the second element is not preparing your fretting hand finger for its next note quickly enough. And this explains why certain licks you play on guitar are much harder to keep your hands in sync on than others. Take, for example, the difference between 2-note per string scales and 3-note per string scales. Have you ever wondered why 3-note per string scales are so much easier to play fast and keep your hands in sync on? Well, let's take a look at this. If you play a pentatonic scale, the first note is obviously played with the index finger, then the pinky finger plays its second note, and then the index finger needs to jump in and play the third note right away. So if you're smart, you're preparing the index finger for its note on the A string while the pinky finger is playing the second note of the scale. So essentially you have a one-note break before the index finger is needed again. And the same pattern continues on every other string of the pentatonic scale.
Never a break.
Now let's compare this with a 3-note per string, say A natural minor scale. Here your fingers can move a whole lot more efficiently and move a lot less, but you're going to play a whole lot more notes in the same time frame. For example, you play the first 3 notes with the index finger first, and then the index finger doesn't have to do anything while the ring finger and the pinky finger play notes 2 and 3, and only then do you need to pick the index finger up and move it to the A string. So the index finger can rest twice as long when you're playing the 3-note per string scale as it can when you're playing a 2-note per string pentatonic scale. The same is true for all the other fingers. Each of them can rest while 2 other fingers play their notes before that finger needs to move again. And this right here is one big reason why 3-note per string scales are so much easier to keep your hands in sync on and to play faster and cleaner than 2-note per string scales. This is also why when you're playing on one string and you're playing 16th note patterns like this, it's generally easier to keep your hands in sync compared to playing 16th note triplet patterns on the same string like this. If you compare the tab of the 2 licks, you can see that in the 16th note pattern, you have a lot of time for each finger to rest before it's needed again. Whereas with the 16th note triplet lick, you have several spots where 2 adjacent fingers are playing right next to each other, and also when after one finger plays, it's needed again very, very quickly. And that is what makes synchronization much harder, comparatively speaking, on these triplet licks. Alright, so now that you know 2 common reasons your hands may get out of sync when you play, what is the drill that's going to exaggerate this problem, expand upon it, and make it easier to fix? Enter picking hand trills. You probably already know what trills are, right? It's just you taking 2 notes and doing hammer-ons and pull-offs on them really fast. For picking hand trills, you do exactly the same thing, only your pick is going to be doing all the work of picking through both notes instead of hammer-ons and pull-offs like this. Now, what exactly does this do? How do picking hand trills exaggerate the problem of two-hand synchronization and make it easier to fix? Well, if you watched up until this point in the video instead of just skipping here impatiently, then you know that one of the key elements of synchronization that you want to pay attention to and expand upon when necessary is how quickly you can get each finger ready for its next note. And there's no harder context to do this in my opinion, than picking hand trills. That's because while the trill is happening, neither finger ever gets a break. Even the index finger, even though it seems like it doesn't do anything, let's say the ring finger is doing all the work here in this example, but the index finger is still moving, because while the ring finger is up in the air after it has played its note, the index finger has to push down the string for its note, and then the index finger has to release the string a little bit while still maintaining contact with the string, which is why it seems like it's not moving at all, while the ring finger pushes down its note. So both fingers are active, both fingers are doing work, and that is why your synchronization is challenged to the max. And worst of all, or best of all, depending on your perspective, you never get a chance to reset your synchronization as you would, let's say on a pentatonic scale, when you have to change strings. Because anytime you change strings, you have a brief moment when you can reset your synchronization. If you got out of sync a little bit on the previous string, you can fix it when you go to the next string. And this is why I said earlier, it doesn't matter how fast or how slow you practice picking hand trills. You're still going to be challenged appropriately for your level, and you're still going to improve your synchronization each time you do them. If you're already a blazing fast shredder playing at 1200 notes a minute with 3-note per string harmonic minor scales, good for you. Try picking hand trills, prepare to be humbled. And if you're just a beginner looking to get your hands in sync and build your speed up over time, that's okay. Do picking hand trills also, just keep it really, really slow, and you're going to improve your synchronization while still being challenged appropriately for your level.
Genius, genius, genius!
Here's how you can use picking hand trills in your practicing. The first level is really, really basic. Stay on one string and do one pair of fingers at a time. Say you start on frets 5 and 6 with fingers 1 and 2. It's going to sound like this. Then you move on to fingers 1 and 3, frets 5 and 7. Then do fingers 1 and 4. And from here you can do something a little bit harder, which is alternate different pairs of fingers 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1 and 4, 1 and 3, 1 and 2. And the goal is to do this in time and seamless so that it doesn't sound like you're changing fingers and there's no break in the timing when you do it. From here, the next level is to do picking hand trills on different strings, and here sky's the limit. You can do adjacent strings right next to each other. You can do From here, the next level is to do picking hand trills on string changes, and sky is the limit here. You can do the same finger combination on every string. You can do the same finger combination on non-adjacent strings, meaning you skip a string or skip one or more strings. You can skip a string and change the pattern. It's really up to you. There's no hard and fast rule, and there's no limit here to what you can do. The only suggestion I'd make is to focus on the picking hand trills that give you the most trouble. So if you have the most trouble with fingers 1 and 2, then you emphasize that pattern. If it's 1 and 3, you emphasize that, and so on. From here, the next level is to start thinking more musically. So instead of thinking only in terms of nonsense patterns like half steps on every string or whatever, you can take, for example, the major scale and isolate a pair of notes on every string from that major scale. So now you're having to think about where those notes are in the scale shape and play those as picking hand trills. So maybe something like this. Here's one more way you can do it. Feel free to be as creative as you want to be here. There's no restrictions. I'm not saying you should practice these particular licks and nothing else. Use your own brain, use your own creativity, and come up with your own patterns. As long as you are working on picking hand trills in some capacity for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes per day, your synchronization will have no choice but to increase. That's because you're zeroing in on and emphasizing and exaggerating one of the hardest elements of keeping your hands in sync, which is getting your fretting hand fingers ready for their respective notes quickly enough. And after doing that, when you go back to your standard pentatonic licks or 3-note per string licks, whatever it is you play, you will notice that they start to sound cleaner, more accurate, more articulate, and your hands feel a lot more synced up. If you want to see one more tactic, one more example of exaggerating a problem of two-hand synchronization and making it easier to solve, check out my video on double picking, which you can watch right here, where I show you one more example. You can exaggerate another element of synchronization and make that one harder to practice so synchronization feels easier to play. And if you want to know more about how to build your guitar speed without doing any slow practice, hit the link below. I'm going to show you a 1-hour masterclass on how exactly to practice without doing the whole song and dance of starting slow and gradually building up speed little by little. That way, I mean, let's face it, it's pretty boring and it doesn't work nearly as well as everybody tells you that it does. And if you already felt that for yourself, if you know that to be true, hit the link below. I'm going to show you a new way to practice you probably have not seen before that may help you feel some pretty significant speed gains as early as tomorrow. If you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, hit the bell so you're notified every time I upload a new video just like this for you. This is Mike Filipov, guitar practice expert from PracticeGuitarNow.com. See you next time.